Yeah, man.
All right, so what Rodney was talking about was JBJ Soul Kitchen opened up in Toms River. And they provide free meals for people who are homeless or can't afford it in exchange for working there. So at first I didn't think that was such a great idea because I work with the homeless, I know them intimately, and they need more than a meal once in a while. And John Bon Jovi Foundation has a lot of money, a lot of resources, and I thought they could do a lot better than that. So I threatened to bring my homies over there and disrupt the joint. And I think that got their attention. So then we started to talk, and I found out that they really are sincere. And in fact, they didn't know there was a homeless problem in Ocean County until they moved in there. And I showed up with people. So now it's starting to work out.
All started head off the mic, you know what I'm saying?
Now the homeless outreach I worked with in Ocean County this morning gave out 70 knapsacks full of notebooks, crayons, and pencils to low-income children so that when they go to school, they don't feel like they have less than the other kids going to school. My role in that is to make sure the homies, the homeless who come, don't just come for a meal, but they participate in giving out these knapsacks, in helping the women with the food and the clothes and everything else, so that we incorporate the homeless into the community so they're not just these lepers on the outside on the margins. I mean, the homeless are part of our community, so embrace them. So that's for that. Now what I'm going to read tonight is an excerpt from my latest book that I've modified just for you guys. For me, throughout my life, writing has been an important way of maintaining a sense of equilibrium and also being aware of what is going on around me and within me. So when in 2010 I was invited by the Ocean County Juvenile Detention Center to organize and run a creative writing program, I accepted the opportunity eagerly. My writing workshop would be part of their RAISE program, an acronym for Rehabilitation Alternatives to Increase Self-Esteem. The youths were between the ages of 14 and 17, mostly males but a few young females from a shelter located in the same facility. It was eye-opening for me to hear about so many things going on in their lives that even adults would have a hard time dealing with. Physical, emotional, and sexual abuse, drug addiction and alcoholism, impermanent and unstable living situations, guns and violence. It seemed to me that they had the resiliency of youthfulness on their sides, but little else in the way of personal resources. It was difficult to imagine most of them growing up and being able to maintain steady relationships or hold a job. And if they were not able to do those kinds of things, then what would they end up spending the next 50 years of their life doing? It seemed to me that for many of them, juvenile detention was just a way station until they get passed into more permanent adult detention. It was sad to see humans fated to spend most of their lives locked up in cages. What I felt I could share with the youth and what I thought might benefit them was how I used writing to improve my life, not just make a living. I wanted to show them rather than tell them, so I read from the book I was working on at the time, which was called Facing Homelessness, and then challenged them to write about some serious event in their lives. Although they could not relate to my story because of my age and different background, they did sense that what I was writing was authentic and from the heart, not something I was making up in order to impress or entertain them. The purpose in doing this was to get them to begin writing about themselves, and furthermore to have them see the value in doing that. To the surprise and delight of the persons in charge of the RAISE program, many of the youth responded well to the challenge and wrote things about themselves they'd never been willing or able to express to anyone before, including their counselors. When I was growing up, many people in my generation looked up to cultural icons who were writers like Kerouac and Mailer, or Ginsberg, Kurt Vonnegut, and Bob Dylan. This generation's cultural references were almost exclusively musical, and specifically rap. Many of them refused to write at all for my class, but were very eager to rap out their thoughts spontaneously. That was fine with me. Most were compelling and all were authentic, one of their favorite words and qualifiers. I enjoyed the back and forth between us. This was a group that if you sounded one false, inauthentic note, you would not only lose their interest, but lose their respect. The way I was writing through my current predicament in life was by keeping it real. So I welcome their unsolicited editing of my stuff. One male youth grew up in the same northern New Jersey city I did, only with about 40 years difference between us in time. One of my earliest recollections of growing up there was being invited to a neighbor's welcoming home party for their son. He was not coming home from the service or college. He was being released from jail. It was that kind of place. Though the demographics of the city had changed dramatically in the last 4 decades. When I lived there, it was made up mostly of first-generation European immigrants. Now it's predominantly inhabited by Hispanic and Middle Eastern immigrants and refugees. He rapped about his experience growing up there, which included becoming the man of his house when he was 17 and his father was sent to prison. He felt that in order to protect his family, he needed to get a gun, so he got one. He was in juvie for getting busted with it. If he had been just a few months older, he'd be doing hard time in a real jail. I pointed that out to him and asked him if that's what he wanted. He responded, "Hell no, man. But how do I stop it? It's like happening to everybody around me." I answered him honestly, "I don't know. But you've got good storytelling talent and a strong mind and spirit. Why don't you try to develop them into an art form you can make an honest living from?" A few months after he was released, I got a letter from him thanking me for the advice and saying that he was working on it. I have no idea what will happen to him and others coming from such difficult backgrounds. But I do know that the circumstances in the communities like the one I grew up in, and Asbury, and others like it, aren't going to change unless we start writing our own stories about our real lives instead of letting others write them for us based on their biased, cartoonish versions of how we live.
You want me to stop it now? You want me to stop it now? You want me to stop it now?
Yeah.
Okay.